I wanted to shift gears to AEW. Did you see any of Dynamite this week, sir?
I did not, and I'm actually really upset about it because I didn't get to see Jericho 30. I really wanted to see that.
Yeah, but you missed out. You did. You missed out. So this is something that I wanted to talk about, and I wanted to give some time to this. Now, Chris Jericho celebrated 30 years in the business this Wednesday night on Dynamite, and I have a tribute of my own that I'll be dropping very soon. So please feel free to retweet, share, and tag the great man yourself once you do see it, because I will be dropping that very soon. Chris Jericho has been in the business 30 years. Now, before I discuss everything that went down on AEW, I wanted to take a few moments just to kind of acknowledge the amazing career he's had. Everything that Chris Jericho seems to have done has been gold. Very little that he's touched has not turned to gold. He is constantly, over those 30 years, recreated himself, whether that be via a gimmick, whether that be by a mentality and attitude. He recreates himself, he evolves, he adapts to the wrestling business. He just keeps coming out with brilliance. Even now, as he crashes into his 50s, he's still one of the best at entertaining you and making you smile and making you laugh and making you emote. He is still working so hard to ensure the talents around him, whether I like them or not, is irrelevant at this point. You cannot sit it I saw some people say, oh, what a surprise, 50-year-old Chris Jericho, taking up the positions of other talents. Behave, he put over Orange Cassidy, mate. I ain't doing that, no matter how old I am. As a credible wrestler. That ain't happening. And he did. He put over Darby Allin, Scorpio Sky. He's trying to make talents. He's trying to make stars. He believes that this company can be the viable threat and the viable alternative to WWE. And he is putting everything he can into that at a much more advanced age where you would forgive him for rocking up, taking a payday, and just doing his own thing. He's trying to get all the guys in the inner circle over with him. I imagine Sammy Guevara is probably going to turn soon, because there seems to be a lot of hints of that. And if they do, he is going to be monstrously over in a rivalry with Chris Jericho. But 30 years of Chris Jericho. The first time I saw him wrestle was on an episode of Nitro. And this obnoxious, wavy, blonde-haired prick comes sauntering out. He's a little guy. He's part of the Cruiserweights. Now, for me, when I was young, I think I was about 12 at the time. This is when I first saw him. When I was young, I always believed that Cruiserweights were amazing athletes, but I just thought they were that. I never thought they were big characters, I never thought they were personas. Dean Malenko, Chris Benoit, Perry Saturn, Eddie Guerrero, Psychosis, Rey Mysterio Jr., all these guys. La Parker as well, what a beast he was. Although he doesn't look like a cruiserweight anymore, I can say that much. All of these guys, for me, they were incredible wrestlers. They were the crazy high-flying lunatics that took up the first hour of WCW Nitro, but they weren't big characters. That was what Hulk Hogan was doing, and Roddy Piper and all these old decaying farts and the odd few, like Jeff Jarrett running around with his guitar and slapping us and things like that. And then I see Chris Jericho, who is just this pompous ass. He is a colossal dickhead, and he was so entertaining. And as you know, I love me some heel. I do. I love dickheads because I'm a bit of a dickhead myself. I like, reprehensible behavior, of course, when it's done in a fictional environment, at least in wrestling. And he was the best at it. Dean Malenko, right, is a world-class wrestler. For me, Dean Malenko is probably the most underrated wrestler of all time. I think he's legitimately top 10. If you're talking just technical wrestlers, I think he's top 10 of all time. I think he's world-class. I think he's one of the greatest wrestlers I've ever seen. He's working the ring. He's so smooth, hashtag phrasing. And Chris Jericho comes out, and he's got a list, and he's reading out he's got 1,004, the list of Jericho. This is where the first list came. And he's reading out these names. And he got emotions and responses and behavior from these guys that you had never seen before. He was trying to rip off Rey Mysterio's mask he was the first guy I saw ever try and rip off his mask. I was like, you fucking dick. You absolute dick. But he brought something to that cruiserweight division. And in many ways, he was too big for the cruiserweight division from a personality standpoint. And thanks to some guys who came right before him and also himself as well, they really broke down barriers for smaller guys in wrestling. And Chris Jericho, obviously from WCW, would move on to WWE, and his, who can forget his debut, interrupting The Rock, the pop. I think he was in Chicago, actually, when he debuted, and the pop was just insane. That music hits, and just as soon as Jericho comes up on the Titantron, there was this eruption, pops that you just will never hear ever again, because that's just not how wrestling is done anymore. Or if you do, it'll be like once every 10 years. And from there, it just blazed a trail. He eventually became the undisputed champion in 2001. Which even then was a huge upset. Despite everything we knew about him, I still remember being shell-shocked. Do you know, that's the one thing I can always say about Chris Jericho. He has always stunned me with what he's done, whether I think he's the best or not, and I certainly think he's one of, if not the best wrestler in the world now, of all time, definitely one of them. For me, he's always stunned me and shocked me. I remember when he won that undisputed title, when he beat The Rock and The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin on the same night. It was such a big deal. Such a big deal. For the company to say, you are our guy, we're going to put you in that prominent position. And, ultimately he fell to Triple H, as so many people did from 2002 onwards. But Chris Jericho constantly reinvented himself. Multiple-time IC champion, multiple-time US champion. He went to NJPW when we all thought he was pretty much done. Not to mention 2007 when he regenerated, so to speak. He re-evolved. He came back with a suit. He was quiet. He didn't want to say anything. There was a Save Us Jericho period as well just before that. He just kept coming back and doing different things. He came back again. We had the Festival of Friendship is magical. With Kevin Owens, the work they did together reinvigorated me. Yeah, it reinvigorated my passion. And one of my favorite and most iconic lines in the history of wrestling, I think for me, it's, I'm sorry I love you, Brett screwed Brett, and then it's, why is my name on this list? Which is, and that was, it breaks you. It gets you every time. Go back and watch the Festival of Friendship when Kevin Owens turns on Chris Jericho. That was a masterpiece of storytelling. And wow, when you think something like that was a work, it was so good that you could have believed it was a shoot. You really could have. And just when you thought he was done, when he finally left WWE or took a break, he goes to NJPW and he creates magic with Kenny Omega. And I don't think Kenny Omega's peaked since then. I think that's the highest point Kenny Omega has been at. And since then, I don't think he's really been able to recapture that magic. I think that's what's so special about Chris Jericho. Whoever he works with, wherever he works with them, he gets the best out of them. And he makes them look much better than they should. And that, for me, is ultimately the legacy of what is one of the all-time great wrestlers. Is the fact that everything that he put his heart and soul into came out looking much better than it did going in, even if it looked great going in the first place. Chris Jericho, an incredible career, 30 years, and still going strong. And here he's in AEW, their first ever champion. And I'm not happy, with some of the stuff that's been going on with Orange Cassidy, but there's no denying that he has helped make that guy even more popular. So regardless of my thoughts on that, you have to give Chris Jericho the ultimate tip of the hat. He is world class. Where do you think Chris Jericho ranks in your mind in the all-time greats? Is he on your Mount Rushmore of wrestlers, Mr. Wilkinson?
He's in my top 5 for sure. If it had to be Mount Rushmore, he can be in my top 4. That's fine. It's not, again, not just because he is Canadian, because I think it's quite well known by now. I have an incredible bias towards Canadian wrestlers.
No idea why that is.
Yeah, fuck if I know. But he's magical. He can reinvent himself. And that's all he's done for the last 30 years. That's longer than I've been alive, by the way. By about a year. Like, I'll be 30 next year in 2021. But this guy has just been wrestling for essentially as long as I've been alive, and he has always been relevant. Sure, in WCW, in the Cruiserweight division, there was always that ceiling that Cruiserweights were going to hit, right? And he knew it, and, Eddie knew it, Benoit knew it, Malenko knew it. They just knew that there was that level you were never going to get over, while all the old guys were still, tearing quads and doing whatever it was that they did. So he jumped ship, and within 2 years, he was the first ever wrestling undisputed champion. That's incredible. And he rides that till, I think it was 2005, I think, when he left the tour with Fozzy for a while. Came back in 2007 with the Save Us Y2J stuff, which was fantastic. And then less than a year later, 2008, like you say, he was out there wearing the suit, like just being like the soft-spoken Chris Jericho. I'm the best in the world at what I do. That match with Shawn Michaels at No Mercy, his rivalry with CM Punk. Even if I don't like Punk, that was still a good rivalry. Chris Jericho is what all wrestlers should try to be. Not, exactly like him, but in adapting to the way the world is, how the wrestling world is in its own little bubble. There's nothing this man hasn't been able to do in 30 years. And honestly, I don't think he's slowing down anytime soon.
Yeah. Truly amazing. If you had to pick Chris Jericho, if you had to pick a position, where do you think he is in the pantheon of the greats? What number would you place him in the ranking of the greatest of all time?
Oh, that is holy shit. Okay. I would still put him in my top 10 for sure. Probably like I don't think I could put him any higher than 5. But I mean, that's still pretty fucking other. I'd probably put him right at the 5th best wrestler of all time. Just his in-ring work has always been great. His mic work has always been great. And the fact that, like I've said like 4 times already, the fact that he can adapt so well. It's a testament to his longevity, his creativity, and his passion for the business. Fuck, I think I just talked myself into putting him up to like 3rd.
Yeah, so the reason I asked that is because when it's all said and done, people will sit down and, I'm sure someone will ask me, who is, and they do now, who is the greatest wrestler of all time? When I was a kid, it was definitely Bret Hart. As I was getting older, I felt that Shawn Michaels was definitely one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. Roddy Piper, for me, is still, in my opinion, the greatest heel of all time. But what is the greatest wrestler of all time? So for me, there needs to be a load of qualifiers for this. There needs parameters. They have to be a world-class mic worker. They have to be a world-class in-ring worker. They have to elevate all the talent they work with. They have to have had a career of longevity. As much as Austin and The Rock are all-time greats for me, it also has to be pointed out that we really only got them in their super prime for 3 or 4 years. I've had consistently in my wrestling life as an adult and as a fan, for the last 22 years, Chris Jericho has been one of the most prominent stars. He has worked with pretty much everybody. His in-ring work, admittedly, not as great now. Of course it isn't, because he realizes that he doesn't need to fucking charge around and have an Iron Man match of technical brilliance, because it's just not needed at this point. He's proved everything he needs to prove anyway. He doesn't need to prove himself any further for me as a wrestler. But as an entertainer, I literally am gripped. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. I might be editing a podcast. I might be sitting here drawing up another crazy piece of art for my social media account, which you can see at Aeron Design. And you can see it right now on the screen if you're watching the YouTube cover of this, because I've done a nice little tribute to Chris Jericho, which hopefully, if I've done it right, you should be able to see it on YouTube as we speak. That is testament to the man himself. Whatever he's doing, I will put down what I'm doing and watch. He is, without a shadow of a doubt, I think it's safe to say that he is, for me, the greatest wrestler of all time. And I don't say that lightly, because I know that The Undertaker is probably number 1 for a lot of people. My top 4 or 5 would no doubt contain The Undertaker and Ric Flair. I think that has to be, and I think Shawn Michaels as well, and I think Chris Jericho. And then I probably put Austin in just over The Rock. Not because The Rock wasn't as special as Austin, but I feel like, what Austin did in saving the company through the Attitude Era, I think he's kind of just pipped The Rock for me. But that's not to say The Rock is an all-time great as well. But like I say, it is subjective. I get that. But for me, if you can find somebody who's had a 30-year career and done more and achieved more than he has in that time, I'd like to see it. Because a lot of people are going to say, well, The Undertaker. No. Because as much as The Undertaker is one of the all-time greatest to ever breathe, the reality is that the last few years of his life, there was very little in the way of work rate, and there was very little in the way of change as well. Undertaker never evolved or changed in a way that Chris Jericho did, and that's not to say that he had to either. For me, Chris Jericho has just eclipsed everything, and he's completely redefined what it means to be a wrestler. And the fact that he was able to go to NJPW for a short stint and work with Naito and Kenny Omega, who were the two most prominent guys in that company, other than Okada, of course, speaks volumes about him. And he did that at an advanced age, at an older age, where he would have been excused for taking a big old payday and sitting on his arse and doing his Fozzy gigs and chilling out. And that's the other thing about him. Whether you like Fozzy or not, you cannot argue the fact that Chris Jericho has done so much outside of wrestling. His podcast is an international success. He is a worldwide rock star. People are like, oh, Fozzy is shit. Yeah, well, they're playing in front of 200,000 people, whether that be contentious or not. You know, he does Download Festival and stuff like that. You know, I've seen him live. I was very blessed, actually. My friends bought me for my 20th, I think it was my 21st birthday, actually. Yeah, it was my 21st birthday at uni. They bought me tickets to see Fozzy in Portsmouth, my local city. And it was great, fucking great. Got to meet Chris Jericho myself. I was popping my tits off for that. Like, he was cool then and he's cool now, man. Everything that he's done has just been fantastic, and he does so much outside. And you know, the thing that we're not talking about, because I never feel that it needs to be discussed as much as it is. People talk about John Cena all the time, and his charitable contributions and his Make-A-Wish and things like that. Find me somebody who's done more to give back to the people in wrestling and around wrestling than Chris Jericho. But, you know, he donates hundreds of thousands, it seems, every year to wrestlers in need for surgery. You know, he gets opportunities for his friends, as we're about to discuss with Luther, of course, in AEW. You know, he not only does he find so many opportunities for people, but he's so giving. You know, and there are a lot of us who don't have that life of luxury, who do struggle, myself included. You know, I do. It's a struggle sometimes to live. And Chris Jericho always puts his hand out and helps as many people as he can and helps lift them up and elevate them to a better position, because he understands what it's like to be in a position of prominence and of, you know, I don't want to say wealth, but he lives a very rich life, which he has earned, and he's more than happy to give back. And we don't talk about that enough, whereas we wank ourselves silly whenever John Cena fucking does a Make-A-Wish. You know, and he's a multi-millionaire and whatever. And that's great. And what John Cena does is fantastic. He's clearly a lovely human being, even though he's made some, you know, bad discrepancies. But hey, haven't we all? We're not here to judge. But that's not to say that Chris Jericho doesn't deserve the same kind of energy for his plaudits and for his abilities. He has been a fantastic human being, and he has been one of the most upstanding human beings in all of wrestling. And he's done it all while entertaining the living shit out of me. Congratulations, GOAT. 30 years.